His hand brushed against mine in the dark hallway, and for a split second, I forgot how to breathe. The warmth of his skin sent a shiver racing up my arm, and I froze. My chest felt heavy, like my secret was about to spill out right there. He leaned closer, his breath brushing against my ear as he whispered, "If anyone sees us like this, you know what it means, right?" I wanted to answer, to pull away, to do something, but I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, trembling, caught between fear and a hunger I didn't even recognize in myself until that exact moment. Hi, welcome to your channel True Story. I really hope you enjoy the story you're about to hear. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story. My name's Lala. I'm 27 years old, married for 4 years now. And to be honest, I never really chose this life. My marriage was something my family pushed me into, a kind of security they thought was best for me. My husband isn't a bad man. He's decent, works hard, provides. But he's cold. There's no warmth between us, no laughter, no late night talks, just silence and routine. For the first year, I told myself that love would grow over time, that maybe I was being impatient. But by the second year, the emptiness became impossible to ignore. We slept in the same bed, but it felt like we were 1,000 miles apart. He never asked me how I was feeling. He never really saw me. And that's when I started noticing the neighbor. He lived in the house right next to ours, just across the small alley. He was around my age, maybe a year older. Every time we crossed paths, I could feel his eyes linger just a second too long. At first, I pretended not to notice. But the truth? I noticed everything. The way he smiled at me when no one else was looking. The way his voice dropped when he said hello. There was one afternoon, I remember it so clearly, when I was hanging laundry in the yard. The sun was sharp, the air heavy. He came out onto his balcony, leaned on the railing, and for a moment our eyes locked. It should have been nothing, just a glance. But my chest tightened in a way I couldn't explain. I looked away, but my hands shook so badly I almost dropped the wet clothes. That night, when I went back inside, my husband barely looked up from his phone. He didn't notice the flush in my cheeks or the way I avoided his eyes. It was like I was invisible in my own home. The next few weeks turned into a game of stolen glances and little sparks that no one else could see but us. I'd be watering the plants in the yard, and I'd catch him watching me from his balcony. He wouldn't wave, wouldn't say a word, just that quiet, burning stare that left my heart racing long after he disappeared inside. I started to crave those moments. They became the highlight of my day. Even when I was cooking dinner or folding laundry, I'd catch myself waiting for the sound of his door, hoping he'd step outside. It was dangerous, I knew, but it was also the first time in years that I felt alive. One afternoon, I was walking back from the little grocery shop at the end of the street. The bags were heavy, the sun blinding. Suddenly, I heard footsteps quicken behind me. It was him. He reached for one of the bags, his hand brushing mine. "Let me help," he said, voice low but firm. I hesitated for a second, then let him take it. Our hands lingered just a little longer than they should have. It felt like an electric current passing between us. Neither of us spoke as we walked side by side down the narrow alley toward our houses. The silence was deafening, but it wasn't empty. It was thick, charged, full of unspoken things. When we reached the gate, he set the bag down and looked at me. Really looked at me, like he was peeling back every layer I'd been hiding under for years. "You don't seem happy," he said softly. I froze. Nobody had ever asked me that before, not even my husband. My throat tightened. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off. But instead, I just whispered, "I'm fine." He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was knowing, almost sad. "You don't have to be," he said before turning back toward his door. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words kept echoing in my head. "You don't have to be." I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while my husband snored beside me, unaware that his wife's heart was racing for another man just a few steps away. Days later, it happened again, this time in the market. I was reaching for a basket of fruit when I felt someone close behind me. That same familiar scent, that same charged presence. He leaned in, his voice barely audible. "You're going to drive me crazy if you keep looking at me like that." I almost dropped the apples in my hands. My face burned, my pulse thundered in my ears. I didn't dare turn around. I just paid quickly and left, but I could feel his eyes following me all the way home. Something had shifted between us. The line we weren't supposed to cross was getting thinner and thinner, and every day I felt myself inching closer to it. I started noticing the smallest details about him. The way his shirt sleeves were always rolled up, exposing strong forearms. The way his laugh carried across the alley on quiet evenings. The faint scratch of his voice when he spoke too softly, like a secret only meant for me. And little by little, I started changing too. I found myself paying more attention to how I looked when I stepped outside, even if it was just to water the plants or throw out the trash. I'd linger in the yard longer than necessary, pretending to adjust the clothes on the line, just to catch a glimpse of him walking past. It wasn't just attraction, it was something deeper. He noticed me in a way my husband never had. When I spoke, even about something silly, his eyes told me he was listening. When I laughed, he laughed with me, not just at the sound, but at the feeling behind it. One evening, the power went out across the neighborhood. The whole street was swallowed in darkness. I stepped outside with a candle, and there he was, leaning against his doorway, cigarette glowing faintly in the night. "You okay?" he asked, his voice carrying across the still air. I nodded, hugging myself against the cool breeze. "Yeah, it feels strange. Everything's so dark." He smirked. "Maybe the dark just makes us see things we usually ignore." Our eyes locked, and for a moment, I felt like the night itself was conspiring to push us closer. The silence was thick, broken only by the faint hum of distant voices and the sound of my own heartbeat hammering in my chest. The next morning, I found a small folded note slipped under my gate. My hands shook as I opened it. Just 3 words, written in sharp, hurried handwriting. "I see you." I pressed the paper against my chest, my breath catching. No one had ever made me feel so visible, so wanted. That simple message burned hotter than any love letter I'd ever imagined. But with that thrill came fear. What if someone else saw? What if the neighbors started talking? What if my husband noticed the way I suddenly avoided his touch, the way I smiled to myself when I thought I was alone? Still, the pull was undeniable. Every time I tried to convince myself to step back, I found myself leaning in further. Every stolen glance, every accidental brush of hands, every whispered word became another thread tying me to him. And deep down I knew something was coming, something I wouldn't be able to undo. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day that should have slipped by unnoticed. I was sweeping the small yard when I heard his voice call out from across the alley. "Need a hand?" I looked up. He was leaning casually against the low wall that separated our homes, a playful smile tugging at his lips. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. "I'm fine, just cleaning." But he didn't move away. Instead, he vaulted lightly over the wall, landing in my yard as if it were the most natural thing in the world. My breath caught. "You shouldn't." I started glancing back at the house. My husband wasn't home yet, but still, this was dangerous. He shrugged. "No one's watching." The way he said it made the air feel heavier, thicker. I tried to focus on the broom in my hands, but my fingers trembled so badly I almost dropped it. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint trace of cologne mixed with sun and sweat. "You don't have to pretend with me," he murmured. I froze. My pulse pounded in my ears. His eyes held mine with such intensity that I felt my defenses crumbling piece by piece. Before I could answer, he reached out, gently brushing a loose strand of hair away from my face. My body leaned toward him instinctively, even as my mind screamed at me to step back. The sound of a car engine growled from the street, and we both jolted. My husband's car. Panic surged through me. "Go!" I whispered, shoving him toward the wall. He vaulted back just as the gate creaked open. My husband walked in, exhausted from work, his eyes glazed with routine. He kissed my cheek mechanically and went straight inside without noticing the way my heart was still hammering, my skin still burning. That night, lying beside him, I couldn't stop replaying the moment in my head. The way our faces had almost touched, the way my body had betrayed me by leaning in. Days later, it happened again, this time at the corner shop. We both reached for the same packet of bread, our hands colliding. Neither of us pulled back. Our fingers lingered, curled, clung. "Careful," he whispered, voice low, dangerous. "Someone might see." But I didn't let go, not right away. I couldn't. Walking home, the guilt twisted in my stomach, but right alongside it was something else, something hotter, stronger. Anticipation. The line we'd been dancing around for weeks was about to break, and deep down, I think both of us knew it. It was late evening when everything finally broke. The street was quiet, shadows stretching long across the alley. I had stepped outside to bring in the laundry, the soft smell of detergent still clinging to the damp clothes. And then I felt it, his presence behind me. I didn't even need to turn. My skin recognized him before my eyes did. "You keep pretending you don't want this," he said softly, his voice carrying in the warm night air. "But your eyes tell me everything." I swallowed hard, my fingers clenching the fabric in my hands. "You shouldn't be here." "Maybe not," he whispered, stepping closer until I could feel the heat of him at my back. "But neither should you feel so alone in your own home." That cut deep. My throat tightened, tears threatening to spill, because it was true. I was alone, despite the ring on my finger, despite the man waiting inside. I turned slowly, and for the first time, I didn't step back. His face was so close I could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, could feel his breath brushing my lips. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might tear through my chest. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. His hand hovered just above mine, trembling with restraint. But I didn't, and in that silence, the last fragile thread of resistance snapped. His hand closed around mine, warm and steady, and for a moment the whole world disappeared. The alley, the walls, the rules, the vows. All that was left was the raw, undeniable pull between us. Somewhere inside, I knew I was crossing a line I could never uncross. But the truth? I didn't care. Not in that moment. For the first time in years, I felt seen, alive, wanted. Then the sound of footsteps echoed faintly from down the street. We both froze, breathless. He pulled away, his eyes burning with a promise I could barely comprehend. "This isn't over," he said quietly, before slipping back into the shadows. I stood there in the darkness, my hands still shaking, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on me. Behind me, my husband's voice called out from inside the house, asking if I was done with the laundry. I couldn't answer right away, because I knew something had changed forever. Thanks for staying with us until the end of the video. If you enjoyed the story, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next video.